I still remember that night. The air was sharp and cold, the kind of December evening where your breath turns into tiny clouds, vanishing as quickly as they appear. I was sitting alone in the living room, the Christmas lights flickering softly, casting weak golden shadows across the walls. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, carrying distant laughter from the neighborhood kids, and somewhere down the street, a dog barked sharply. As if warning of something unseen, I should have been happy. After all, Christmas was supposed to be a warm, cheerful time. But that night, my chest felt heavy, and a strange, quiet dread had settled over me like a thick fog. Earlier that day, I had received a message from my husband. It was short, simple, almost casual, but it sent a chill through me. My family is visiting for Christmas. Perfect. I'm on vacation. You're in charge. His words sounded innocent enough on the screen, but the way they echoed in my mind felt like a trap. In charge. What exactly did that mean? His family was? It's complicated, overbearing, judgmental. And now I was alone with the full responsibility of hosting them, with no warning, no preparation. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just a family visit. But something in my gut told me that this Christmas was going to be different, dangerous, even as I walked to the kitchen to pour myself a cup of tea. I noticed the small, faint sound of a floorboard creaking upstairs. My house was supposed to be empty. My husband had already left for his trip, and his family was nowhere near yet. I froze, gripping the mug tightly, my knuckles turning white. I could hear my own heartbeat thumping in my ears, loud enough to drown out the wind. It's just the house settling, I whispered to myself. But the unease didn't leave. My mind began to race through possibilities: an intruder, a prank, or maybe just my imagination. Still, my eyes darted nervously toward the staircase. Half expecting someone to be standing there, watching me, I decided to ignore it, trying to focus on practical things: decorations, snacks, the little touches that would make a family feel welcome. But every time I reached for something, I felt that chill creeping up my spine, like icy fingers brushing against my neck. I could almost hear whispers, faint and indecipherable, drifting through the rooms. I convinced myself it was the wind, shifting through the cracks of the old house. Still, the feeling of being watched would not leave me later that night. As I prepared the guest room, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, brushing my hair, trying to appear calm. But when I looked at my reflection, I didn't see the confident, organized person I wanted to be. I saw fear, anxiety, doubt, and beneath it all, a small, nagging voice that kept repeating, "Something is not right." The house was silent, save for the occasional creak of settling wood and the soft hum of the refrigerator. I sank onto the bed, trying to steady my breathing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was out there waiting. Waiting for what? I didn't know. But I knew I had to be careful. One wrong move, one careless step, and this Christmas could turn into a nightmare I'd never forget. Around midnight, I finally decided to go downstairs and check on things. The living room was quiet, the lights of the Christmas tree casting a soft glow over the furniture. Everything looked normal. But then I noticed something strange. My husband's father's coat, the one that usually stayed in the hallway closet, was hanging over the arm of the sofa. I hadn't seen it there before. My heart jumped. Had someone come in? But the doors were locked. I wasn't imagining things. My eyes scanned the room again, faster this time. The coat looked different somehow. Worn, as if someone had just tossed it there carelessly. I wanted to call my husband, but I stopped myself. Didn't want to alarm him. Not yet. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I decided to pour another cup of tea to calm myself. But as I lifted the kettle from the stove, I heard it again, the faint whisper of a voice. Low, almost too soft to hear. I froze. My blood ran cold. I strained my ears, trying to catch the words. But all I could hear was the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then the whisper came again, clearer this time. My name. Are you ready?" I dropped the kettle. It shattered on the tile floor with a loud crash. My heart skipped a beat. I ran to the living room, staring at every corner, every shadow. Nothing moved, nothing breathed. And yet the sense of being watched was stronger than ever. The whispers had stopped, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I spent the rest of the night on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, clutching my phone like a lifeline. Every little sound made me jump: the wind, the ticking clock, the distant hum of a car outside. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, but deep down I knew something was coming. Something I couldn't see yet. Something that would change this Christmas forever. And then, just before dawn, I heard the front door creak open. I still remember that night. The darkness in the living room felt heavier than ever, pressing down on me like a thick blanket. My heart was hammering so loudly I was sure it would give away my hiding spot to whoever or whatever was in my house. I could see the dim glow of the Christmas tree lights reflecting off the floor, the ornaments casting tiny shadows that danced eerily on the walls. Outside, the wind had calmed slightly, but it no longer felt comforting. It felt like a warning. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just sat there, clutching the blanket around me, listening. The front door had closed, but the sound of footsteps, soft, deliberate, was coming from the hallway. Someone was walking slowly, almost carefully, toward the staircase. Each step made my stomach twist into knots. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was a burglar. Maybe it was a neighbor who got lost. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. I could feel it in my bones. I reached for my phone, but my hands were shaking too much. The screen lit up my face, pale and tense, and for a moment I hesitated. Calling the police seemed logical, but something told me that by the time anyone arrived, it would already be too late. I had to face this myself. Somehow, the footsteps stopped, right above me. I could hear the faint scrape of shoes on the wooden floor. My breath caught in my throat. Then came a whisper, soft but unmistakable. "Are you alone?" I couldn't respond. My mouth felt dry, my tongue glued to the roof of my mouth. The voice was strange, not one I recognized. It didn't belong to my husband, his family, or anyone I knew. It was cold, hollow, threatening, even in its softness. The room felt smaller suddenly, suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, faster now, like a drum counting down to something terrible. I forced myself to move, creeping toward the staircase. Each step I took seemed loud, almost echoing in the silent house. I had to see. I had to know who was there. As I reached the bottom of the staircase, I froze. A shadow flickered at the top, then disappeared behind the railing. My body tensed, ready to run, but my legs felt heavy, like I was stuck in place. I whispered almost to myself, "Who's there?" "What do you want?" No answer. Only silence. I climbed the stairs slowly, holding the railing tightly. The hallway was dimly lit by the nightlights I had placed for the holiday season, and the shadows seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally. As I approached the guest room where my husband's family would soon be staying nigh, noticed the door was slightly ajar. I was sure I had locked it earlier. I pushed it open. The room was empty, the bed neatly made, the decorations still perfect. Nothing seemed out of place, and yet I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Something had been there. I could feel it. The faint smell of cologne, one I didn't recognize, lingered in the air. And then I saw a small piece of paper on the nightstand. I picked it up, my hands trembling. It read, "You can't hide from what's coming." My heart stopped. My fingers shook as I dropped the note. I backed away slowly, my mind racing. Was this a prank, a threat, or something worse? I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator from downstairs, the only sound in the house. But now every shadow felt alive. Every creak sounded like a footstep. I ran to the living room and grabbed the biggest knife I could find in the kitchen drawer. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but it gave me a tiny sense of control. I needed to protect myself. I needed to survive this night then. Just as I thought I was alone, I heard it again, a whisper, so close to my ear I could feel it brush my skin. They're coming, and you can't stop it. I spun around, swinging the knife, but there was no one there. My chest heaved, tears stinging my eyes. Fear had completely taken over, and I realized something terrifying. Whoever or whatever was in my house, they weren't here for money. They weren't here for things. They were here for me. I backed into the living room, looking for a place to hide. I considered running out the back door, but the thought of stepping into the cold night, alone with an unknown intruder, terrified me more than staying inside. I needed to stay. I needed to survive until morning. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Time felt distorted. Every shadow, every whisper, every small sound sent my heart racing. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't sleep. I could only listen, waiting for the next sign, the next movement, the next whisper. And then I heard the unmistakable sound of the front door unlocking again. But this time it wasn't slow. It wasn't careful. It was fast, deliberate, angry. And I realized with a horror that froze my blood that someone had a key. Someone was inside my house, fully aware of where I was. Fully aware that I was alone. I crouched behind the sofa, knife in hand, trying to control my breathing. My ears strained for every sound, my eyes scanning every shadow. The front door opened, and I heard laughter, low, cruel, and menacing. It wasn't a family member. It wasn't a prank. It was someone else. Someone who knew my deepest fears and was here to exploit them. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but my body refused to obey. I was trapped, frozen in terror. As the footsteps approached the living room, and then I heard it, the faintest whisper of my husband's voice. "You didn't think you could handle this alone, did you?" I still remember that night. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the knife, and my heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. That voice, my husband's voice, or something pretending to be his scent, a chill down my spine. I wanted to call out, to demand answers, but the fear lodged itself in my throat, making me mute. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape. But where could I go? This was my home, my sanctuary. And now it felt like a trap. The footsteps drew closer, slow and deliberate, circling the living room as if the person knew every shadow, every hiding spot. I could hear them pause just for a moment before letting out a small, cruel laugh. It wasn't human, not entirely. There was something strange, almost unnatural, in the way the laughter resonated. It wasn't just a person, it felt like something bigger, something meant to terrify. I crouched lower behind the sofa, trying to make myself invisible. My ears picked up the faintest noise of floorboard creaking upstairs. I froze. Someone was moving above me now, carefully. But their intent was clear. They were hunting for me. I pressed my back into the sofa cushions, wishing I could vanish. My mind raced, trying to figure out what to do. Should I run to the kitchen and lock myself in? Should I try to escape through the back door? Every option seemed terrifying. But I knew I couldn't stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, they would find me. And then I heard it again, the voice. That voice. My husband's, or someone perfectly imitating him, whispered from the hallway. Low and taunting. "You thought you could handle everything alone, didn't you?" I felt tears burn my eyes. How could he, or whoever this was, sound so familiar, so believable? My mind wanted to believe it was my husband joking, but deep inside, I knew it wasn't him. The tone, the subtle malice behind the words, was all wrong. This wasn't love. This wasn't comfort. This was control, fear, manipulation. I realized with growing horror that whoever had come into my house knew more about me than they should. My habits, my fears, even the smallest routines. They were inside my mind before they were inside my home. And now every creak of the floor, every whisper of wind through the cracks of the windows, felt like it was meant for me, like I was being watched, studied, prepared for something I couldn't yet understand. I needed a plan. I needed to act. Slowly, carefully, I inched toward the staircase, keeping low, trying to move silently. My goal was simple: get to my bedroom, lock the door, call the police, and survive until help arrived. But as I reached the foot of the stairs, I stopped dead. There, on the steps, was a small folded envelope. The handwriting was familiar, yet chillingly wrong. My name was written in large, uneven letters. I swallowed hard and picked it up. Inside, a single note: "You can't hide from us. We see everything." A cold shiver ran down my spine. Who were they? Was it one person or more? And why did it feel like they weren't just in my house? They were inside my life. I clutched the note to my chest, my thoughts spinning out of control. I could hear movement behind me, soft footsteps on the carpet. I spun around, knife ready, but there was no one there. Only shadows. Shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally. Moving in ways shadows shouldn't move. Panic surged through me and my legs gave way. I stumbled backward, crashing into the sofa. The knife slipped from my hands and clattered to the floor. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come. My mind was screaming, my body frozen. Every sense was heightened. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, even the faintest rustle from the kitchen. Every sound became a threat, every shadow a predator. I backed toward the living room window, thinking maybe I could escape, maybe I could signal someone outside. But the curtains fluttered lightly, and I saw a figure standing on the porch, motionless, watching. I couldn't make out their face, just a silhouette framed by the faint glow of the streetlights. My stomach dropped. They weren't hiding. They didn't need to. I ran faster than I thought possible, toward the back door, yanking it open. The cold December air hit me like a slap, sharp and bracing. For a moment, I thought I was free. Maybe I could run to a neighbor, to safety. But then I heard the voice again, behind me, carrying over the wind. "You can't run. You never could." My blood ran cold. I spun, searching for the source, but there was nothing. Only the snow-covered yard, the trees swaying gently, and the faint glow of the streetlights. And then I noticed footprints. Not mine. A series of deep, heavy prints leading from the porch into the woods behind my house. Someone had followed me. I froze, the terror gripping me in a vice. My mind screamed at me to move, to run, but my legs refused. Every instinct told me this night was far from over, that whatever had entered my house wasn't just a threat, it was a warning. Something bigger was coming. Something I couldn't see yet. And then a noise I'll never forget. The faint, deliberate creak of the front door opening again. Slowly, slowly, I realized with sheer panic that they weren't done. And now they had a new target. I still remember that night. Every sound, every shadow, every breath seemed sharper, more dangerous. The footsteps grew louder, echoing through the living room like the heavy drum of an approaching storm. My body trembled violently as I crouched behind the sofa, knife clutched in my shaking hands, my mind racing with every possible scenario. Was it my husband? One of his family members? Or something else entirely? I couldn't see anything. The darkness swallowed the room, broken only by the faint glow of the Christmas lights. Shadows stretched across the walls, twisting in shapes that didn't exist. My chest heaved with every heartbeat, each one pounding like a warning drum. I wanted to run, but my legs felt paralyzed, as if the fear itself had rooted me to the floor. Then I heard a whisper, closer than ever. "You can't hide." Not from us. It wasn't my husband. I was certain now. There was a coldness in the voice, a malice that didn't belong to anyone I knew. I felt panic curl in my stomach and spread like fire. I realized with growing horror that this wasn't a random break-in. Whoever or whatever was in my house knew exactly what they were doing. They wanted me terrified. They wanted me exposed, vulnerable. I gripped the knife tighter, my knuckles white, and slowly began to move toward the hallway. The footsteps stopped, almost as if the person or thing knew I was moving. My breath caught in my throat. Every instinct told me to run, to hide, to do something. But I had no idea what would work. My mind flicked through memories of horror movies, stories I'd read, advice I'd heard, but none of it helped. None of it mattered. As I reached the hallway, I saw it, a shadow at the far end, tall, still, watching. I froze. My throat tightened. My legs refused to move. And then it stepped forward. Slowly, the faint sound of boots against the wooden floor filled the air, steady and purposeful. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I knew that would only draw attention. I forced myself to stay silent, barely breathing, hoping they wouldn't notice me. My mind raced, trying to figure out a plan. Maybe I could escape through the bedroom window. Maybe I could lock myself inside and wait for help. But my husband's family was due any minute. What if they came early? What if they were part of this? The figure stopped at the end of the hallway and leaned slightly toward the living room. I could see the faint outline of their face now, just barely. But it was wrong. The eyes? The eyes were familiar, yet cold, empty, like they were wearing a mask of someone I loved but weren't at all. And then, a voice I never thought I'd hear in that tone came again. Did you really think you could handle this alone? I crumpled to the floor, panic overwhelming me. Tears streamed down my face. I wanted to beg, to reason, to plead, but no words came. I felt helpless, completely exposed. And then the shadow moved closer, each step deliberate, heavy. Confident, I remembered something as small, almost ridiculous trick my grandmother taught me as a child when she said, "When scared, make yourself small. Make yourself quiet." I closed my eyes and tried to shrink into the floorboards, willing myself invisible. It worked at least for a moment. The shadow paused, tilted its head, and then, slowly, it retreated back into the darkness of the hallway. My body shook violently, my breath short and shallow, as I tried to convince myself it was gone. But it wasn't gone. I could feel it in the air. A presence lingering, watching, waiting. Every tiny noise, the creak of the house settling, the rustle of the curtains, even the hum of the refrigerator felt like it was meant to scare me. And then I remembered the note. You can't hide from us. We see everything. I realized then with growing horror that this was far bigger than me. Whoever or whatever was in my house wasn't just there to scare me. They were testing me, preparing me, and I didn't know what for. I backed away slowly, toward the kitchen, thinking maybe I could get out the back door. But then I heard it, the faint jingle of keys in the front door. My heart stopped. Someone was coming in, someone I hadn't expected. I pressed myself into the corner of the kitchen, knife at the ready, trying to control my shaking. The door opened. A man stepped in. My husband. No, my mind screamed that it couldn't be him. But the voice, it was the same. That cruel, familiar, impossible voice. "Merry Christmas," it said softly. Almost mockingly. My stomach dropped. I didn't understand. I didn't want to. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how this could even be happening. And then, from the hallway, I heard footsteps. More footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and multiplying. I was trapped. Completely trapped. And that's when I realized something terrifying. The intruder wasn't alone. I still remember that night. Every second felt stretched, like time had slowed just to make my terror last longer. The whispers surrounded me now, soft but insistent, filling every corner of the house, echoing in my mind. I pressed myself into the corner of the kitchen, knife in hand, trying to gather courage, trying to make sense of what was happening. But logic was useless. Fear had taken over completely. The footsteps grew louder, and I realized I wasn't just hearing one person. There were multiple, moving together, coordinated, as if they had rehearsed this before even stepping into my house. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my chest. I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. Every muscle in my body was frozen with panic. Then the voice came again, soft, deliberate, and cruel. "You thought this was just a family visit? You thought it would be easy?" My stomach twisted. The voice sounded like my husband's, but it was not. It had the same tone, the same cadence, but behind it was something dark, hollow, almost mechanical. I realized with horror that whoever this was, they weren't just pretending, they were mocking me, studying me. My fear was their game. I knew I had to act. I couldn't stay trapped in that corner forever. Slowly, carefully, I began inching toward the back door. Each step felt like it might betray me. Every creak of the floor made me flinch. My breathing was shallow and my palms were slippery with sweat. But I had no choice. I had to survive. As I reached the back door, I froze. Through the small window, I saw movement in the yard shadows, moving quickly, almost dancing. My heart skipped a beat. They were outside too. They had followed me, anticipating my escape. I realized then that this was not just about entering my home. This was about controlling me, surrounding me, breaking me. I pressed my back against the door, trying to steady myself. I could hear voices, now multiple, low, whispering in a language I didn't understand. It wasn't words. It was threats, promises of pain, warnings that chilled me to the bone. I felt trapped between the living room, where the first intruder was, and the yard outside, where more figures lurked. My house had become a cage. And then I heard it. A familiar sound. The jingle of keys in the front door again. My heart nearly stopped. I didn't know how many were inside, how many were outside, or what they wanted, but I knew one thing. They were organized. They were planning this. And I was the target. I backed away slowly, thinking desperately. Maybe I could hide in the pantry. Maybe I could lock myself in the bedroom. Maybe I could do something. But the whispers grew louder, more urgent, almost guiding me toward the staircase. I realized then that this wasn't random. This wasn't just a break-in. They were trying to make me move, trying to push me toward something. And in that moment, fear became something worse. Clarity. I needed to fight. Not just hide. Not just run. I needed to survive. Slowly, I moved toward the staircase, the knife clutched tightly. Every shadow seemed alive, every whisper like a warning. And then I saw a figure at the top of the stairs. Tall, imposing, silent. The Christmas lights from the living room reflected off the edge of their face, but I couldn't make out details. Only eyes, dark, cold eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. I froze. My body refused to move. And then I heard the voice again, almost directly in my ear. Though the figure was still far above me, you cannot hide and you cannot run. This is your choice. I swallowed hard, tears streaming down my face. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight. I wanted to disappear. But all I could do was stand there, trembling, staring at the figure at the top of the stairs, and then, without warning, the lights in the living room flickered and went out. Complete darkness. I was alone. Or at least I thought I was. But I could still hear them. Whispering, moving, waiting. And I realized with absolute terror that they were closing in from every direction. I had nowhere to run. And then I heard the front door open. Again. I still remember that night. The darkness around me was thick, almost solid, pressing in from every side. My heart was pounding like a drum, each beat louder than the last. I could feel the presence in the room, their eyes on me, their whispers brushing against my mind. I was terrified. Yet part of me knew I couldn't just freeze forever. I had to survive. Somehow, the lights were out. And the house was filled with shadows that seemed to twist and move on their own. I clutched the knife tighter, feeling its cold metal against my palms, and tried to control my breathing. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I knew they had trapped me. The front door had opened and closed, yet no one had come in or out. That meant someone else was already inside, waiting, watching then. Faintly, I heard it, a slow, deliberate whisper that made my blood run cold. Do you see now? Everything you know is a lie. I spun around, trying to locate the voice, but there was nothing, only shadows. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, almost filling the room with invisible pressure. I could feel them moving closer, circling me like predators. My mind screamed for logic, but fear had clouded every thought. I realized I wasn't just scared for myself, I was scared of what they might do next. I inched toward the hallway, hoping the back door might offer an escape. But as I passed the staircase, I noticed something horrifying. One of the stairs had a small smear of red. At first, I thought it was a shadow, a trick of the dim light. But as I got closer, I realized it was blood. A tiny smear, just enough to make my stomach churn. My breath caught. Someone or something was already hurt. Or maybe it had been bait, a way to scare me even more. I pressed my back to the wall, sliding down slowly, trying to gather my courage. The knife felt heavier than ever in my hands, but it was all I had. All I had to protect myself. Then I heard movement behind me. A soft, deliberate shuffle across the floorboards. I spun around, knife raised, but no one was there. My mind was racing. I had to escape. I had to hide. I had to survive. Slowly, I started toward the bedroom, hoping to lock myself inside. As I reached the door, I noticed something strange. The key was already in the lock, and the door was slightly ajar. I hadn't left it like that. My heart jumped. Someone had been in my bedroom. Someone had been there while I was in the living room. My thoughts raced faster than my heartbeat. I pushed the door open cautiously. The room was empty, but something was off. The bed was perfectly made, almost too perfect. Nothing else seemed disturbed, except a single envelope on the pillow. I picked it up with trembling hands. Inside, a note. You thought you were ready. You're not. Tears stung my eyes. I wanted to throw the note away, to burn it, to destroy the proof that someone was tormenting me, but I couldn't. I couldn't stop reading. I couldn't stop thinking. Then I heard a sound that froze me completely. The faintest creak, like a floorboard shifting under weight. It came from the closet. My stomach twisted. I backed away slowly, knife in front of me, every nerve in my body screaming. The closet door was slightly open. I didn't dare look inside. It's time to play, whispered the voice again, cold and menacing. I realized with terror that this wasn't just about scaring me. They weren't here to rob me. They weren't here for money or even revenge. They were here to break me, to control me. And the realization hit me like ice water. I was completely alone. My husband was gone. His family hadn't arrived yet. No one would come for me, not tonight. I backed out of the room, heart hammering, and stumbled into the hallway. The whispers had multiplied, overlapping now, almost deafening in their intensity. Shadows flickered along the walls, dancing in impossible ways, and I could feel them moving with me. Everywhere I turned. Then I heard it, footsteps approaching fast. Heavier this time, and they weren't alone. I could hear multiple sets now, closing in from every direction. My throat went dry. My legs refused to move. And then I remembered the knife, clutching it with everything I had left. I spun around, ready to face whoever or whatever was coming for me. And then the lights flickered back on. I froze. The room was empty. The hallway was empty. The house was silent, eerily silent. My heart was still hammering, my body trembling. I couldn't breathe. And just when I thought maybe, somehow, I had survived this moment, I heard the whisper again, closer, almost in my ear. You can't hide. Not anymore. Still remember that night? The sound of that laughter echoed in my mind like a warning, like a drumbeat of fear that wouldn't stop. It was coming from my husband's bedroom, the room I knew should be locked. The room I had thought would be a safe barrier between me and whatever was in my house. But it wasn't locked. And the laughter. It wasn't just a joke. It was cruel, menacing. I froze in the hallway, knife still clutched in trembling hands, staring at the door. My body felt paralyzed, but my mind raced faster than I had ever thought possible. Who was in there? Why were they here? And how could they know I was terrified? My chest tightened, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to do something, but I had nowhere to go. I slowly, carefully edged closer to the door, trying not to make a sound. My bare feet pressed against the cold wooden floor, each step feeling impossibly loud in the silence of the house. I reached out a trembling hand and pushed the door open slightly. The room was empty. My husband's bed was neatly made, just as it always was. The closet doors were closed. Everything looked normal. But I could still hear the laughter, faint now, coming from somewhere else. Somewhere I couldn't see. I backed away, heart racing. My mind was spinning. How could this be happening? How could someone get into my house, move silently, and manipulate me like this? Every logical thought was gone. Only fear remained. Pure, uncontrollable fear. I tried to steady myself. I needed a plan. I couldn't just wait for them to find me. I had to do something. I crept back down the hallway toward the living room, where the Christmas lights flickered softly, casting shadows that looked like they were moving. I could hear whispers, again soft, insistent, surrounding me, coming from all directions. You can't escape. You belong to us now. It's too late. Each whisper was like ice crawling up my spine. I backed into the living room and pressed myself against the wall, trying to think. My mind was foggy with panic, but I knew one thing. I had to survive. I couldn't let them win. Then I noticed movement from the corner of my eye. A shadow flickered across the room. I swung the knife instinctively, but there was nothing there. Just the shadows dancing in the light. My hands shook violently, my chest tight with panic. I realized I was running out of options. I needed to hide. I needed to escape. But the house, my home, felt like a trap. Every door, every window, every shadow was filled with danger. And then I heard a voice I never thought I'd hear, in that tone, my husband's voice. Unmistakable, but wrong. Cold, unfeeling. You should have listened. I froze. My stomach dropped. My blood ran cold. Could it really be him? My mind refused to believe it. But the voice sounded real, too real. And it carried the same cruelty I had been feeling all night, suddenly. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, filling the room, filling my mind. I felt like I was being pulled in all directions, like the walls themselves were closing in. My vision blurred. My legs gave out beneath me. I collapsed to the floor, knife clutched helplessly in my hands. Then I heard footsteps above me, slow, deliberate, coming down the staircase. My heart stopped. I realized they weren't finished. They weren't done with me. I scrambled to my feet, back toward the back door, desperate. I had to escape. I had to survive. But the voice followed me, cold and relentless. There's nowhere to run. You belong to us now. My back hit the door. I yanked at the handle, but it was locked. Panic surged. I banged on it, screaming, tears streaming down my face. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, as the footsteps grew nearer. I could hear breathing now, heavy, controlled, watching. Then I realized something horrifying. This wasn't just about fear. This wasn't just a prank or a break-in. This was personal. They knew me. They knew my habits, my routines, my fears. Every move I had made tonight, they had anticipated. And then I heard footsteps coming down the hallway, approaching fast. They were closing in. Too fast. Too precise. I braced myself, knife ready, heart hammering in my chest. And in that moment, I knew the truth. Whatever was happening tonight wasn't random. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't just about scaring me. It was about control. And I was trapped. I still remember that night. I still remember the way the air felt on my skin, cold, heavy, like the whole house had turned into a living thing watching me. I stood frozen against the back door, my knife trembling in my hand. And then I felt something cold pressing against my shoulder. It wasn't a hand. It wasn't even metal. It felt like ice itself, like something not entirely human. I couldn't breathe. My mind screamed at me to run, to fight, to do anything, but my body refused. I stayed still, shaking, my back pressed hard against the door. I could hear them behind me now, breathing slowly, almost rhythmically. I could even feel it, a faint heat rising from them, but not like normal warmth. It was sharp, unsettling, and then a voice whispered directly into my ear. Low, almost tender. It's been so strong. But we're done waiting. I spun around instinctively, swinging the knife. For a split second, I thought I saw a figure, tall, dark, the outline of a face, but then it vanished like smoke. My knife cut through empty air. I stumbled backward, hitting the door hard, my breathing ragged and fast. The room was empty again. Just me, the Christmas lights flickering, and the sound of my heart slamming against my ribs. I pressed my back harder to the door, searching desperately for the lock. But my fingers felt numb. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the handle. Then the laughter started again. Not from upstairs this time. Not from the hallway. From inside the living room. Deep, echoing, layered, like more than one person laughing at once. You don't get it yet, do you? Another whisper hissed from the corner. This isn't about tonight. This is about everything. Tears blurred my eyes. I blinked them away and focused on the sound. There in the corner of the room near the Christmas tree. A shape. A shadow that didn't belong. It didn't move like a normal person. It swayed slightly, as if it was flickering between being real and not real at all. My voice cracked as I shouted, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" My words echoed off the walls, thin and hollow. The shadow didn't answer. Instead, it moved. Slowly at first, then faster, darting from one corner to the other with impossible speed. The lights flickered harder. The shadows stretched along the walls like claws reaching for me. I backed up against the kitchen counter. Gripping the knife with both hands now. My arms ached, my knuckles white. Every sound felt magnified, the creak of the floorboards, the ticking of the clock, the soft hiss of my own panicked breath. Then, from the hallway, I heard another sound. Footsteps. But these weren't slow and deliberate like before. These were running, charging, toward me. I braced myself, heart hammering, and just as the footsteps reached the doorway, the lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed me whole. I couldn't see. I couldn't even tell where the knife was pointing. I could only hear footsteps all around me, whispers, breathing. The faint sound of someone dragging their fingers along the wall. This is the part where you finally see. The voice was so close, it felt like it was inside my head. Suddenly, the lights snapped back on. For a split second, I saw them figures. 3 of them. Faces hidden behind masks that looked like grinning skulls. They were standing in a triangle around me, silent and still. My knife slipped from my hands and clattered to the floor. My breath caught in my throat. My legs refused to move. One of them stepped forward, taller than the others. He reached into his coat pocket slowly, deliberately, never breaking eye contact. I couldn't look away. My body felt locked in place. He pulled out a small envelope just like the one I had found earlier and held it out toward me. His gloved hand didn't shake. Mine did. Trembling, I took it. Inside was a single line written in sharp, deliberate letters. This is only the beginning. I looked up at them, my mouth opening, but no sound coming out. And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the lights flickered off again. Total darkness. When the lights came back on, the room was empty. No figures. No shadows. No sound. Just me, holding the envelope, standing in the middle of my living room like I had imagined it all. But I knew I hadn't. The smell of something sharp like metal lingered in the air. The back door was unlocked now, slightly open. Letting in a thin draft of cold air. I stood there, frozen, clutching the envelope. My heart wouldn't slow down. My knees felt weak. My whole body trembled, and then my phone buzzed. A text message. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was from my husband. Sorry about tonight. They arrived early. I still remember that night. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. The text from my husband, sorry about tonight. They arrived early, burned itself into my mind. I stared at the words, heart hammering. My chest felt tight, my breathing shallow. My mind screamed at me to call him, demand answers, find out what he meant. But my instincts told me something else. Danger was still in the house. The front door creaked again. Slowly, deliberately. My body froze. My knife lay on the floor, useless, out of reach. I could hear footsteps, soft, confident, moving toward me. I backed away, trying to put distance between myself and whatever or whoever was coming. Then a voice. My husband's, but not quite. It was wrong, hollow, twisted. I told you to handle it yourself. My stomach dropped. My breath caught in my throat. I staggered backward, barely aware of where I was going. The living room felt like it had expanded into a maze of shadows. Every corner, every doorway, every shadow seemed alive. My mind spun with panic and disbelief. I forced myself to think. I had to survive. I had to escape. Slowly, carefully, I made my way toward the kitchen, hoping the back door might finally be my way out. My ears strained for any sound that might give me a clue where they were. But all I heard were my own ragged breaths and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then I saw movement. Shadows flickering across the walls, shifting unnaturally. I could see figures in the darkness, no more than one, watching, waiting. My heart leaped. They weren't hiding anymore. They were making themselves known. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the rug. One of the figures stepped forward into the dim light. A mask covered their face, but something about the posture, the way they moved. It felt familiar, terrifyingly familiar. It's not just about fear, the figure said softly, almost mockingly. It's about control. And tonight, you will learn who really holds it. I realized then, with horror, that the intruders weren't random. They weren't strangers. They knew me. They knew everything about me. My husband, his family, even the life I thought was private. And now I understood what the text meant. They had arrived early. They had planned this long before tonight. Panic surged. I looked for another exit. Windows, doors. Anything but every way out seemed blocked or worse under their watch. I felt trapped, hunted, exposed. My mind screamed at me to fight back. But how could I fight against shadows, whispers, and unseen forces that knew me better than I knew myself? Then I heard footsteps behind me. Faster, closer. I spun around. Another figure emerged from the darkness, masked, silent, and moving with terrifying precision. My heart pounded so loudly I thought they would hear it and target me first. I grabbed the envelope from earlier. Maybe it held answers. Maybe it held a clue. But as I unfolded it, I realized it was blank. Nothing. Just empty paper. My fingers shook. I felt hopeless. Cornered dot, suddenly a whisper came directly into my ear. So close I could feel the breath. You should have handled it yourself. Now there's no turning back. Tears streamed down my face. My body trembled uncontrollably. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg, but my voice refused to work. And then I heard it. The sound of the back door slowly opening. Cold air rushed in. I froze. Was this my escape? Or another trap? My instincts screamed to run. I dashed toward it, stumbling over furniture, knocking over ornaments. Ignoring the pain in my arms and legs, I flung the door open and stepped outside. Snow crunched under my feet. The night was silent, too silent. Relief washed over me. Until I saw the footprints. Deep, heavy, multiple sets leading from the house into the woods behind my property. They hadn't left. They were still following me. I ran blindly, heart hammering, arms aching, breath ragged. My only thought was survival. Get far, get away. But the whispers followed, haunting me, surrounding me, even outside. And then in the distance, I saw it. A faint light. A car? A neighbor's house? Hope surged. I sprinted toward it, pushing myself harder than I ever had in my life. But just as I reached the edge of the yard, a hand clamped down over my mouth. Hard, cold, unyielding. I screamed silently into the night, struggling with all my strength, and the last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was the masked face. Inches from mine, smiling. I still remember that night. The cold hand over my mouth, the masked face so close I could feel its breath.
Okay.
the darkness pressing in like it would swallow me whole. It all felt unreal. My heart was pounding so violently, I thought it might burst. I struggled, kicking, thrashing, trying to break free, but their grip was iron. And then, just as I thought I might pass out from fear, a voice spoke. Enough. It was my husband's voice. Clear, real, not hollow, not twisted, just his. The hand loosened, the mask pulled back. I stumbled backward, gasping, my knife forgotten on the snow-covered ground. My husband stood there, eyes wide, but not with malice, with fear. I didn't know what they would do. He whispered almost to himself. They said if we didn't. He swallowed hard, glancing nervously at the shadows at the edge of the yard. I shook my head. My mind was spinning. What are you talking about? What is happening? I yelled, my voice cracking. He looked at me, shame and terror written across his face. It's my family. The ones visiting tonight. It's not what you think. They're part of something. Something bigger. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could protect you. But I was wrong. They planned everything. Even the visit was just a cover. I stared at him, numb, as the pieces began to fall into place. The whispers, the shadows, the laughter, the envelopes, it had all been orchestrated. My husband had tried to keep me safe, but even he had been trapped in this nightmare. And then I saw them. Figures stepping out from the darkness of the woods. His family. The ones coming for Christmas. But they weren't normal. Their eyes glinted strangely in the light, their movements calculated and unnatural. It was like the kindness and warmth I had expected from family had been replaced by something sinister, something almost otherworldly. I clutched my husband's arm. My mind screamed. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted that tonight would be normal? But it was too late to panic anymore. The figures were coming closer, and my survival depended on action, not fear. We have to move, he said urgently. They'll only get stronger if we stay. Follow me. We ran. Snow crunched under our feet. The cold air burned my lungs, but adrenaline carried us forward. The house disappeared behind us, swallowed by the shadows. I dared not look back. Whispers echoed faintly, fading as we put distance between ourselves and the nightmare. Eventually, we reached the edge of the woods, where faint lights glimmered neighbors, perhaps, unaware of the terror that had unfolded so close to them. Relief surged in me, but it was fragile. I realized the danger wasn't over. It would never truly be over, not completely. But for tonight, we had survived. We collapsed on the snowy ground, panting, trembling, tears streaming down our faces. My husband held me tightly, murmuring apologies I didn't need to hear, promises I barely understood. I realized something in that moment. Fear could break you, but it could also make you realize what mattered most. Family, love, trust. These were stronger than the shadows that had haunted us tonight. I still remember that night. Every detail, every whisper, every shadow. And I know now that surviving isn't about avoiding fear. It's about facing it, holding on, never giving up, no matter how impossible it seems. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about surviving fear, facing the unknown, and how you would handle a night like mine.